I realise that when I start these recordings, I say exactly the same thing every single time. It's like, hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's great to see you here. But thanks for coming. I've got a couple of small announcements to make, and then Nick is going to give us a bit of a demo, a talk on Vale, which is very exciting because I think part of it's going to be live, and you know how I am typing commands live into the terminal while I'm being recorded, and my brain just goes complete. No, sorry, I shouldn't put any pressure on Nick. Things are going well. I don't know if you've looked, but there are like 31 different open tasks. Many of them are taken, but Artem actually has just done a brilliant job of adding a few more just today. We also have, I think, a WSL task, which looks interesting. We've still got some things from the open printing organization, which is outside of our organization as well. And internally, we are trying to work with the teams at Canonical that don't have kind of technical author representation to get them to add their issues. We had, I mean, it all happened in a week. We had the Launchpad team create a couple of issues, and one of those issues has already been completed this week, and they were really pleased. I think that was the first community contribution they'd ever had to their documentation, so that's really good. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we are really trying to think about recognizing people's contributions now in a meaningful way, in a way that will help people who are taking the effort to, even when things aren't completed, because that's the nature of some of these tasks sometimes, but recognizing the effort that people are coming in a way that's meaningful for them. We're talking about trying to create something that works across the organization so that it's not just specific to documentation, although it may be recognized through documentation as the discipline. We hope to try and do this sooner rather than later because it's important, and I'll hopefully have some updates next time. The other thing I wanted to mention is that thankfully it's great that we're getting a bit more organized, and there's a schedule on the forum for the topics that we're going to be covering for these office hours. Take a look, and it's a great idea to see what kind of things are coming up if you're specifically interested in them, and please also leave in the comments if you'd like to see us cover specific areas. I'll put the link when we do the notes for this recording afterwards, but it's easy to find on the forum. And I think with that, if Nick's ready, I'm going to hand it over to Nick to talk a little bit about Vale. I should probably make you an admin, Nick. Sorry, I haven't done that.
Yeah. Yes, you should. Well, it depends whether you want me to be able to share anything or not.
Yeah, I made a mental note to do this before I started talking. Did I? No. There you go.
Thank you so much. Okay, sorry, excuse me a second while I try and find the screen I want to share. What I'm going to do is you would have thought I would have prepared something. But I got as far as setting up a virtual machine to demo some stuff, and then reality happened. So I think I know what I'm doing. So if you bear with me, I will try and demonstrate Vale, which is a tool that we've started using for linting, checking our documentation. So let me share my.
And either his virtual machine has taken over the network or he hit the wrong button. I was going to provide a bit of Vale is an open source tool that's used by lots of people. I mean, I don't want to cover I don't know what Nick's specifically going to cover, but it's not a canonical technology. It's used by lots of projects. There's a lot of depth to it. But as you can imagine, trying to create tooling for linked language. Oh, Nick, you're back. I don't know if you're aware, you disappeared there.
Yes, I became aware of it when I tried to share the screen. Chrome crashed, so I will try again. Okay. Let's see. I hope you've been talking amongst yourselves, and
seems to. Seems to be working.
Okay. So everyone can see. I do. Yeah. Do shout out if anything goes horrendously wrong, which it probably will. So Vale, this is as far as my preparations got. I preloaded the website for Vale in the Firefox browser. Vale is a linter, a checker for that works on words and sentences rather than code. So it is quite useful. It's sort of like I don't know if anyone has used Grammarly or things like that. It's not quite like that because it doesn't really check grammar, but it can be used to check particular phrases or the way things are expressed, or things like, you know, how you use headings in your documentation or what have you. So this has become interesting to us because at Canonical we have a style guide. It doesn't have an awful lot of stuff in it, but you know, not everybody seems to be following it. So one of the things we would like to do is to be able to check and see that things are consistent, and B, to help people, to nudge them in the right direction of being consistent. So that's why we've been experimenting with Vale. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say, there'll be a link at the end with some notes and some links for all these pages and resources that I may or may not discuss. So look out for that. Okay, so I've also taken the liberty of installing Vale already. So I run the command with Vale and it tells me what it is. I can't check anything though because I don't have any rules. So let us collect some rules. Probably do it that way. We have a repo that has our rule set in it, and I managed to spell everything correctly there. So if we have a look at that, this repository contains the styles, which I'll go into later, which are the individual files containing the rules. So you can see some of them there. We'd like to name them sensible things so that we can tell what they are. Makes it handier when you're when it gives you messages about things that are right or wrong. So now we have some rules. We can check something, and there is already a markdown file in this repo. So I can just do that, and it will check that file, and it's got some errors in it. That isn't actually so surprising because this getting started file is like explain some of the rules and what they check for, and these are some of the things that they check for. Words that we'd prefer people not to use. So you can see it's fairly, from a user standpoint, once you've got the rules and the configuration, which is this file here, the vale.ini file, and I may as well show you that. There's not actually very much in it. All this does is say use the canonical rules. It checks in this directory, styles, which is where all these rules live. So that's handy for checking that file. We can also use it. Vale understands the difference between the source, different source codes. So you can run it on HTML, you can run it on Markdown, you can run it on restructured text, you can run it on ASCII doc. There are various formats that it understands. The HTML is an interesting one because it means you can do things like this. Let's see, think of a web page. Ubuntu.com. Kubernetes. Isn't going to work. No one told me I've spelled it wrong. Right, okay. I just fetched a web page from the internet, and now I can run Vale against it. Oh, and it works. That seems very suspicious. I'm not sure I trust that, but in principle, that's you know, that's something you can do. You can run it against published sites as well as local files. If you think that you know, Canonical's rules aren't good enough for you, there are other places that have different sets of rules, and one of the reasons this is particularly useful is you know, you may be contributing to hopefully to a documentation set that's related to something based at Canonical, like for example, one of our Kubernetes distributions, and that may also lead you to contribute stuff, for example, to the upstream projects, and they may use a different style guide. They may want names to be used in a different way, and they may have a different list of words they don't like, or you know, preferred ways of doing links or whatever. So what you can do is then fetch other rule sets and switch between them. So I think I already collected. Yes, I did. That was clever of me. I already collected a set of Google's style guide rules. So if I can determine the directory structure that they've used here, I think that will work. No, that wasn't what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. Oh, that is what I wanted to do. Probably. Now, if I edit the Vale file and change this to that, and then run this again, look, Google hates us, and their style guide has all sorts of different suggestions. Now, as I said, there are lots of places that may be useful, especially when you're contributing to different projects. A lot of places will maintain their own style guide. I wish more of them did it in a similar format. But another thing that having a useful set of rules can do for you is Vale will actually integrate into a lot of editors as well. So I have also hopefully got VS Code. You could obviously use Codium as well. I have loaded this up, and there's an extension for Vale. You do have to change the settings. The things important here are where the config is. I already pre-configured it for this directory. You may want to have a central place where you store all your different rule sets, and then obviously you would use that. It also, you need to tell it where the path to the CLI client is. Mine's a local bin in this case because I installed it with pip. It's a Python package. There is a snap available of Vale as well. There are on the website, there are various different ways to install it. It also will work on Mac and Windows and things like that. So that is the settings. And now what that means is, I look at this file again. These warnings, which for some reason I'm not seeing on my screen. Why can't I resize this window? Anyway, here we go. Sorry, I resized this VM to be so that, you know, so that the text would be big enough for people to read it. I hope that is the case. Anyway, you can now see that the rules themselves are surfaced as these problems. Commas and periods go inside quotation marks. Do they? Oh yeah, they do. Well, I'm sure there was a good reason for that at the time, but anyhow, it shows how you can use it as you're actually generating documentation. It's always annoying if you've got we have an action set up in GitHub that checks for things which don't align with the rules that we've set, and that's great, but it's a bit annoying to have to make a pull request or something to you know, see if you've made a mistake, and it's much easier to pick up things as you go along. And like I say, this there are integrations with other editors as well. I'm sure we can discuss afterwards, you know, which ones people use. And I think the other thing, I shouldn't have closed that, should I? The other thing, some people are curious about the rules themselves, and you know, how do those work? There are some. This is the named version one I was mentioning. They're expressed as YAML files, and quite a lot of them use regular expressions to look for patterns in the text. It's quite clever because it can target just headings, or just things in tables, or just things in the body text, or all of those things, or there's a raw scope as well, which is basically raw HTML, and then it can do clever things based on the patterns it finds. This one is quite clever. I was mentioning earlier, though possibly not in the bit that we're recording, that this helps people make sure that they use the correct code names for Ubuntu releases, and that they remember to put LTS after the ones which are LTSs. Obviously, this is a rule that's only useful for people doing documentation that mentions Ubuntu a lot, but you know, there you go. It is there. We also have quite a collection of rules for different things. Contractions we don't like, product names and the way we like to present those. So really, there's a lot of scope for even making your own rules for your own writing to catch maybe mistakes that you tend to make. I think Peter Matulis contributed this simple one, which just notices if you repeat the same word twice in a sentence, which is like quite a common thing that people do. You see it. It's sort of difficult to pick up yourself, because if you see the something, your mind usually tries to make it into something that you understand. So you know, it can be useful for that sort of thing too. I think that is really it for the things that I wanted to show, unless, as I still have this open, anyone wants to shout. Let's see. Has someone put their hand up or something?
Yeah, Iqbal has.
Okay. We'll go ahead.
He's typed the question. Oh, they've typed the question. Sorry. Nick, may I please ask why you haven't licensed the Vale config repo? Red Hat uses MIT, OpenSUSE uses GPL3, but this is the first time I've seen one without the license.
It's news to me that it doesn't have a license. I thought it did have a license.
Yeah, it doesn't actually.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm sure someone will make an issue and we can add a license. Yeah, like I said, that's a new information to me. I guess that license must have related to something else.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned that it uses the Vale uses regular expressions. Could you talk a little bit about, I mean, what they are and what's the scope of what Vale can test for? How do you even begin to learn regular expressions? Because it all looks like Vale to me.
Okay, cool. How you learn to regular expressions are just a way of declaring a pattern of something. Why is Google not being my friend?
I think if you scroll to the bottom, you might be able to.
Yeah, I can't scroll to the bottom there. I physically can't scroll.
Go.
And now I can't do. Now I don't seem to be able to do anything in that window, which is rather annoying. Okay.
It's because you criticized Google in the.
Yeah, that's probably it. Okay, well, I'm back in the room. Yeah, so regular expressions. Was it Pearl that first started using regular expressions? It's just a symbolic way of declaring or describing a pattern that you can match for in text, basically. And that the site I was trying to show you, regex 101, is a great place for that, because it has a live editor on the site, so you can try out. It has lots of tutorials and explains regular expressions and how they work, and it also has a live site where you can write your rules and test them against a set of text, which is great. It even allows you to save things there, and you can browse the things that other people have created on it. So it's great for like trying to work out how to do things in regular expressions.
Is there anything that Vale can't do? I mean, can you? I mean, I don't know this. I mean, can you write some kind of logic? If you've got to decide whether something is valid, for example, can you add some additional logic to describe, I don't know, a certain pattern that may be specific to your product?
Yes, you can. I mean, it's remarkable what you can do with regular expressions. There is a sort of limited. I think it uses Go. I think you can write smaller procedural stuff in Go script. I'm not the expert on how you create rules in Vale, even though I've done a few myself. I think, but we do have some experts who at creating rules. So if people have questions specifically about that, then ping us in the Matrix channel or whatever, and we'll try and help.
Does anyone have any other questions? Sorry,
no one else has any questions.
Peter's raised his hand.
Yeah, just looking at what Vale does, it makes me wonder what you could do with a large language model. Train it on all the canonical documentation that exists, and then tell it rewrite this in that style. Do you think that would work?
I don't know, but if someone wants to give it a try and let us know, I'm sure I'm sure we'd be interested in what happened there. Have we had a discussion about LLMs and versus documentation?
No, we've not. I think actually Robert has scheduled one for a future office hours.
Well, let's not stray there then.
I may be away for that one. Or replaced.
Yes, actually, I've seen some great AI video generation. I'm sure you just type in the script for your little intro thing, which is fairly static anyway, and we could create a Max Headroom style replacement.
Go for it, Ruth.
Yeah, I guess, like, now the kidding aside, how can we use AI for that? I think it would be possible if we had like some documentation with the typical errors and other documentation that doesn't have any of that. I think it would be possible to train a model on that, which would probably do about the same thing as what Vale is giving us right now. Now, thinking about what would happen if we run it on our current documentation, considering that we're just getting started with Vale, I think it would get a lot of inconsistent input and wouldn't really learn anything. But I think if we had good input, especially also like both good input and bad input to train it with, I think that is definitely something that could work.
Nick, did you mention, I guess, how Vale is used in the context of things like continuous integration, deployment pipelines, and things like that? Because, like, one way of using Vale is just, you're working in your editor and it's kind of a helpful guide. Maybe you should be careful about using this phrase. Just it can give you a warning and you can then respond and change how you're writing. The other way it's implemented is potentially that if someone has a particular kind of error or some type of writing that we don't want in our documentation, it actually blocks the documentation getting deployed potentially.
Yes, and actually, if someone wants an example of how you can use Vale in that way, that very same repository that has the Vale code in it also has a GitHub action that you can copy, use, which will do exactly that. It'll run on changes to documentation in a repo, and it actually goes and comments in the pull request, and nags you to fix things in the pull request you get. And you comments,
and you can kind of, if you're altering the rules, you can decide, I guess, which issues stop.
Yeah, it does have a thanks. It does have a the concept of different severity levels. So some things are cautionary and some things are like fails, warnings. So you can set that up. You might, for example, not want to allow any documentation that spells the name of your company wrong, but be more permissive about whether people can have a heading with a exclamation point at the end of it or something like that.
Well, if there are no other questions or comments,
If there was any interest, I could very quickly show what it looks like in neovim and show an example of something really small and stupid I worked on before I got this Canonical job to kind of practice with Vale, and maybe see an example of a bad rule, or a rule that maybe if it was enforced, it might be a mistake. So I could quickly do that.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
I'll share my screen. We'll see how it goes. Entire screen. Share. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is neovim. So this is just another editor. And what we have here is a warning for add sugar. So this, I wrote kind of some rules for recipes. And it says tablespoon is vague. So I'm a scientist, so I might like something like grams or milligrams or something like that for this type of unit. And the reason I think this might be a bad rule, for example, so I have some rules set up in Vale for saying that, oh, if someone says add sugar, they should really, use something more specific. But, if this was being blocked, it might be a problem, because someone could have written something like, then add sugar, such as sucrose or fructose or something like that. So that's a perfectly legitimate sentence, and my rule that I've written doesn't really capture the possibility that someone had used add sugar, but it also qualified what they were saying. So in my computer here, I have a styles section, and one of them is called food lint. So this is the thing I wrote, and there's various rules here for things like ambiguity and equipment size and ingredients and things like that. This wasn't very well developed, but this is the rule here: add sugar. So if we find this in the text, this might refer to multiple kinds of ingredients, be more specific. But the person could have actually been more specific while also using add sugar. So I think that's just an example of a rule that maybe I should have worked on for a little bit longer. So you have to be careful with the type of rules you write, and I guess the type of ways people might use the term you have a problem with, for example.
Shane, is there a risk that you may spend longer writing the rules than writing the documentation itself?
It depends. I mean, at Canonical, I guess there's a lot of people writing under rules, so a person can pick one rule and work on it, and then spend a lot of time working on the documentation. I think if someone was responsible for writing all the Vale rules, that might take a lot of time. But I think it's a good thing to do incrementally, as we observe different kinds of issues. But I think there is that particular risk with regex-based things, which is that you carefully define a particular instance of some sort of issue, and then there's just so many edge cases. And the more specific your regex, the more brittle it can be. The best way for people to learn about that kind of brittleness is, a way to use regex is VS Code has a built-in regex-based search for any file you're working in. So does neovim and vim. Many editors do. And if you start using search and replace based on regex when you're working on a big document, so you come up with a nice regex expression to find every instance of a specific type of word or term and replace it or delete it, you very quickly encounter some issues with edge cases that you haven't considered. I think these rules need to be very carefully considered and tested, probably locally on different examples before they're pushed up to a rule set for an organization, for example.
Iqbal's got a question. Go for Iqbal. Iqbal's asking if you could show that at all, Shane.
Show what?
The regex in neovim, I think. A regex in IDE. That's putting Shane on the spot. Do a search and replace for.
Let me see if
they're suggesting VS Code, but I don't. You may not have it installed if you're a neovim user.
Yeah. So let me just quickly see if I can do this. This mightn't.
I can cut this from the recording if it doesn't work, Shane. Don't worry.
Yeah. So like it's something like, you know, if we have then 2, I think I can go colon %s/then, and that will find every instance of then in my text file, and then I can replace that with that, for example. And then I put a / for G, which means global, which means do it throughout the text file. And then I press enter, and it does this replacement. And this is a terrible example because I'm not prepared. But for example, if then 2, which is what we had originally, if then 2 is some sort of important technical term, but we have made the decision to replace all instances of that with then, or we've made a decision to replace all instances of then with that, like we did with the search and replace, then we haven't captured this particular instance where that set of characters has a specific meaning in the string that it's used in. So the basic thing is that in VS Code and in other text editors, we have this very powerful ability to use, this is a very simple example, but regular expressions to find certain instances of words, and we can replace them all very quickly. But there's always the possibility that we don't consider certain edge cases. Again, this edge case is a terrible example, but that's just because I'm not prepared.
No, I know what you mean. You can set conditions on the characters that follow something and the characters before, and then you can change ranges rather than specific strings.
Yeah, so you could say like, I want to change every instance of orange to apple, but then you find that you're also changing orange juice, but you didn't want that to happen. So then you have to expand your regular expression to say something like, replace every instance of orange with apple except in the case of orange juice. And then the rule gets more complex, and as you find more edge cases, it could get more complex and potentially more brittle.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to run tests on when you make rules and things like this, or you use the regex 101 to like test it against things which you suspect may induce a false positive. We not extensively, but we usually, when we're adding rules, Vale rules based on regex into that repository, we'll make a file and try and imagine some edge cases and test the rule against them. And then if you find, yes, that's true, Ruth. But then when you find those things in the wild, you can adjust your rule accordingly and add them to the test to make sure that that they're covered.
Yeah, go for it, Iqbal. Have you had a chance to test Vale with stuff like inline comments for code?
For inline comments,
I think they mean comments in code.
Right. Okay. We haven't. We do have some rules in our style guide, in the not Vale rules, but in the actual sort of written word style guide, about overuse of comments in code. So we will be having a rule related to that. Yes, I believe we can. We can do that, and we're certainly going to attempt to do that in the future, but we don't have anything currently that does that.
I mean, that would be, I don't know of any of our projects that they should generate documentation such as API reference from comments in code or something like that, but that would be a great place to have Vale testing. I can see how that is. Iqbal says, please share it when we do have something.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
One other thing that came up in discussion recently as well, I don't know much about it, but Vale can give you some metrics, like some numbers about a file. At the risk of discombobulating people, I could share my screen again.
Oh yeah, it's great. I love to see your neovim skills.
This is not so much news. I turned off my camera after mixing my buttons up. Share. Okay, where am I? Okay, so I'm in the same directory again. I got my testmd file, and I'm going to call Vale, and I'm going to say ls metrics. I think that's just list metrics. So this is built into Vale on the command line, and then I feed in my file to this, and it gives me the number of characters, the number of complex words, the number of polysyllabic words. Obviously, there's very little in this file, but basically, these types of metrics, characters, complex words, polysyllabic words, these can be used to construct rules in Vale that get a measure of the complexity or the difficulty of something that you're writing. So there's some rule sets that are available for Vale that people have already prepared, which determine, for example, the reading level of a piece of text or something like that. So I just thought that was an interesting aspect of Vale that's something for people to explore if they're interested.
That's actually something we could add to the list of future ideas, discussing. I've got some opinions on tools that tell you the reading level or the difficulty level of text. It'd be interesting to have a conversation about it, and I'm sure we all do. Yeah. If there are no more questions, I will thank you so much, Nick. That was really, really great. A great introduction to Vale. It really makes me want to experiment more with regex. And thanks, Shane, for demoing your stuff too. I really want to see what you've got installed with MUDEC. I saw an MUDEC file in when you were doing LS in your folder. But next week, Katana's going to do a presentation on technical author or technical writer. So that will be good. I'm going to stop the recording now and give anyone who wants to ask any questions off the recording the chance to do so. So thanks, Nick. Thanks, Shane.